So the RF safety video got some good engagement. I thought I'd come and do a second one and fill in some of the gaps. Coming up. Hey, I'm Ria and welcome to The Shack. We talk about ham radio and other radio-related hobbies and activities on this channel. So if you do like the content, please help the channel out by hitting like and subscribe. We're at 3K now, and thank you very much. It helps keep things growing, moving along, and bringing more content just for you. If you would like to use this video or any of my videos for a club presentation or other presentation to ham radio group, you are more than welcome to do so. You don't need to ask my permission. However, I would appreciate if you do link the channel for attendees so they can discover more videos and learn more stuff. Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for all the kind words that I've received for the last video on RF safety. I did this video for you to ensure that you operate safely and within the FCC rules if you're in the United States. For other countries, I've linked a video from the RSGB in the UK, and others I will link as I see them. The rules should actually be pretty similar internationally because humans are, well, humans, and RF exposure doesn't care about your nationality. Yes, there will be differences, but I don't anticipate them being that much. I'd also like to say that all credit for the development of RF safety material goes to the ARRL Lab and RF Safety Committee, in particular Greg Lappin, N9GL, and Ed Hare, W1RFI from the lab. They did the hard work. However, I did a video because I felt that it needed to be in an easy-to-digest format. I don't mind helping out. You can share the video, ask questions, and I'll answer them best as I can. If you need further help from the ARRL, you can ask the Technical Information Service, or TIS, at www.awrl.org/TIS, and they can answer your questions. You can also comment below and I can help you out best I can. Finally, if you'd like to support the work of the lab, you can donate at www.awrl.org/donate and select the ARRL Lab Fund. You can also mail a check to ARRL headquarters to the address on the website. No amount is too small, and they actually send you a donation receipt letter as it's tax deductible for U.S. residents. Okay, let's get going. The first comment comes from AE1TP or A92GW, Tom. Most of the population uses a phone stuck the side of their head for half a day, every day. Definitely agree with you on having done due diligence to protect yourself. So yes, a lot of people walk around with their cell phones stuck to their ears, at least those of us who make phone calls on a regular basis. Many of us don't. As I mentioned, the cell phone manufacturers actually have to perform a specific SAR or specific absorption rate analysis and testing. They use the complicated robotic machinery and calibrated instruments to do so, and it's done by a certified lab. It's quite expensive, and I don't see most radio amateurs doing this. However, since a cell phone is less than 20 centimeters away from your body, they have to do it. John Thornton did comment that he deals with it in MRI. I assume he works in the biomedical field, and yes, that's true because, well, an MRI actually exposes you to RF energy. Actually, a lot of MRI equipment has crossover with ham equipment. Alpha amplifiers, for example, back when Dick Airhorn owned a company, also made RF sources for MRI machines, or something like that. Handheld amateur radios will likely also be subject to the SAR requirement, but as discussed, the manufacturers will probably end up doing it or simply reusing the test for commercial radios which are certified for nearby frequencies. However, 2 meters and also 1.25 meters, which is 222 to 225 megahertz, which is an amateur band here in the USA and a few other countries, are below 300 megahertz, and SAR evaluations typically aren't done for those frequencies. What is the situation for now is that the ARRL has asked the FCC to clarify, and the FCC basically said they're working on it. Don't worry about it for now. Anything that was on the market prior to May 3rd, 2021 is grandfathered anyway. That brings me to another point someone brought up. All of the different antenna combinations that we use will require evaluation. Yes, these will have to be evaluated. However, the antennas really aren't all that different in terms of gain and pattern. It's not like a smartphone with a fixed antenna, like Apple, who puts an antenna on the outer ring of the case and then tells you you're holding it wrong when it massively underperforms. Hey, I had an iPhone 4. It was my first iPhone. Factory unlocked to boot. And I experienced antenna gate firsthand, to use a pun. Nonetheless, we'll have to see how this shakes out. You know, I used to have phones with antenna jacks on them, which were very useful as cell reception where I live is absolutely terrible, and I had a high gain antenna on my car, which worked really well. TS stated that the long-term studies are conclusive. Russian studies in the 70s said as such. It's cumulative over time, I believe. I haven't researched this, but a good point that Wayne Overbeck, N6NB, brought up was that these minimum distances in RF exposure analysis were primarily designed to take into account the heating effect of RF on your body, and they should be treated as an absolute minimum distance. We don't know the other effects of RF on the body. There have been limited studies in rats where male rats develop tumors, but we don't know conclusively whether humans will develop these. Other studies may show health risk, but so far we haven't seen a smoking gun that says that the radio waves and their non-ionizing radiation cause any kind of disease. Nonetheless, it's always a good practice to keep as far away as you can from RF sources, particularly at high power and high frequency, for safety's sake. Next, my Towagonian friend, Andy 9Y4 Whiskey, brought up a good point. Please note that cable losses mustn't be left out in the calculations. This helps especially on VHF and UHF, where cable losses are significant. A few dB can make the difference between compliance and non-compliance. Also, the height of an antenna tower often solves any problem to begin with. Good point, Andy. I kind of did mention it, but I'll make it clearer. What you should do for any of the calculators, or even if you do the calculations by hand, is to use one of the coax loss calculators, or even measure your coax loss using an antenna analyzer or power meter to determine the power at the antenna as a starting point. I have a whole video on a coax loss calculator by EFHW, which you'll see right up here somewhere. Take a look if you get a chance. However, even if you don't have the coax loss included, you're actually doing a safer evaluation as a worst case scenario. As far as height goes, absolutely true. If you can put your antennas way up high, then you're golden. My antennas start at 150 feet away from the house and 70 feet high, and the furthest transmit antenna is almost 600 feet away. Of course, if you're in a small lot and perhaps even an apartment, you will need to factor your coax loss to make sure you can actually operate. Peter Klein writes, how do I evaluate, say, my 2-meter SSB/CW Yagi antenna on the roof? I know its main lobe gain, but not how much it exposes me in my shack 20 feet below it. My guess is that it's not much more than a dipole, and the published pattern of a similar antenna shows quite a bit less. On that basis, I easily pass. Is that okay, or do I have to dig deeper? To Victor Ham Radio also asks, I'm struggling with finding the right location to measure exposure distance from an EFHW antenna. Some RF discussion websites talk about using the center of the antenna as a measuring point, but others show that radiation plots make it seem that you need to start from the feed point. Good questions, and this brings me to a major caveat of these calculators. It's not a one-size-all-fits-all for every single case. What you generally do is model the worst case, where the main lobe or forward direction of your antenna with the most gain and where it's closest to people. This way, anything less is covered. Published spec sheets for antennas usually list the forward gain and also front-to-back ratio, and you can calculate how much ERP or effective radiated power is in the pertinent direction. Especially model your proximity to your neighbors if they're close by, so you're covered if ever any questions ever arise about your setup. The free ebook RF Exposure and You from ARRL discusses this in chapters 4 and 5. It's linked in the description. Also, you should look to eliminate scenarios where your antenna will never be pointed at anyone. For example, if you have a direction you never operate, you can run the calculator and keep a record saying that you simply do not transmit there. Also, look at where people are in relation to your antenna. Places would be like the street, your neighbors' homes, and even your own backyard. Make sure you model these cases and keep the result. But generally, if you model the worst case, you're covered. Jim W3ATV writes, "My concern is the accuracy of these online calculators. We are amateurs after all, and I would be concerned about doing an inaccurate evaluation due to an error with the calculator." Jim's concern is a valid one. The calculators are based on formulas contained in FCC Bulletin OET 65 and amateur guidance contained in OET 65B. The ARRL Lab and RF Safety Committee have done extensive work on this. Wayne Overbeck has actually had his original basic program vetted by the FCC. So I have strong confidence in the calculators. Even so, the actual minimum requirements are pretty conservative. In particular, the initial set of calculations I described in the video for exemptions are very conservative and go well beyond what an evaluation would tell you is a safe distance. I would encourage everyone to aim for compliance with the exemptions, even if they do a full-blown evaluation. This way you have two sets of calculations documented if ever a question arises. Speaking of questions, people ask if the FCC will care about these rules. They do, but not in the way that you might think. The FCC is not going to ride around in a surveillance van and check your field strength. What may happen is one of two things. The first and most plausible is if you're putting up new antennas at your station. In some areas, you'll need to go do a public hearing and go before a zoning board. There are people who don't like towers. They have this fear of what's coming out of your antenna, or will use this to attempt to get your application denied. Ergo, your purpose in doing the calculations is to ensure that you are covered and that you can document that you are in compliance with the rules as set out by the FCC. You're giving your zoning board one less reason to deny you permission to erect an antenna. You are also demonstrating to the public that you care about their safety. Public opinion can make or break your case, so it's always good to educate people and set an example. The other reason is that if there's ever a question by anyone about your station after you put it up, you are in compliance. Good record keeping is paramount to demonstrating that you're taking your privileges seriously. I do this for every endeavor ever. For example, when I fly drones, I'd never just throw the drone up in the air and hope for the best. I always have a flight plan, always check the airspace, request permission, physically inspect my drones, and keep logs of maintenance and other things. I know people who will fly even manned aircraft who just kick the tires, spin the propeller, taxi, and then are on their way. It's not how I roll. It's not how you should either. So you should document your station as part of good amateur practice, which is something I encourage every radio amateur to do. A few other things I'd like to mention here. The rules haven't really changed much. What has changed is a categorical exemption that hams used to have. Instead, it has been harmonized for all radio services. And I do mean all of them, CB radio included. Even if you operate illegal power, you don't care about the rules anyway, but why would you care? Why won't you care about where your radio signals go and to whose body it gets absorbed? I'm not here to tell you don't operate. I'm saying that being a good neighbor is priceless. And remember that the MPE calculation is not the only method. You can use the simple exemption calculation, the MPE calculators, and also antenna modeling using software like EasyNet. However, the MPE calculation is the safest, easiest method for radio amateurs. You may not get a result that is close to the legal limit, but you will get a result that gets you safely in compliance. The ARRL, in particular the ARRL Lab, will have a lot of information on this coming up. Any updates and developments, I'll be sure to report here. The rules are not set in stone. There are always efforts to make accommodations for radio amateurs and our unique situation. However, as I've said, it's best to err on the side of caution. Finally, our friend James Leah, WX4TV, asks from hamradio.world, asks if this will be applicable for portable ops. The answer is absolutely yes. Portable and mobile operations were exempt before, but not anymore. The good news is that most people should be in compliance, and the calculations are easy to run. Speaking of which, I'd like all of you to at least attempt to document your RF safety procedures for field day. It's coming up, and with the public health situation changing for the better, a lot of clubs are planning to have a full in-person field day. I hope to see many of you as I plan to drive around and visit sites, but maybe not as many due to the fact field day plans for clubs are still in flux. Run the calculators and print the results. It'll tell you how far you need to be to remain safe. Safety is an important component of field day, especially those who treat it as a preparedness exercise. Well, that's all for now. I hope this at least clears up some things for you. And as always, if you like the content, give us a like and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. There are new topics and more videos coming up. Maybe tell me what you want to see a video on and I'll try to do it. Until next time, keep on hamming. This is N2RJ. See ya.